2007, a jury convicts Christopher Edwards of second-degree murder. There's no body, no recovery, no direct proof of how Jessica O'Grady died. The case is built almost entirely on what investigators say happened inside one bedroom. Blood on the mattress, blood on the walls, blood on the ceiling. And based on that, they reach a conclusion, but a conviction answers one question and raises another. Did they prove it? Welcome back, listeners, to Dark Dialogue, the podcast where we unravel the shadows of the human mind and dive deep into the mysteries that haunt small towns and big cities alike. I'm your host, John.
And I'm Angela, and together we shine a light on the stories that keep us up at night, the unsolved disappearances, life stolen too soon, and the questions that refuse to be buried. We know what they say happened, but that doesn't automatically mean it holds up.
In the first episode, we followed the path that investigators took. Jessica disappears after going to Christopher Edwards' residence. Days later, her car is found. Inside his bedroom, they find her blood, and based on that, they make an arrest. Now we step back because a conviction isn't the end of the story. It's where the case has to stand on its own.
So now it's not about what they think happened. It's about what they can actually prove.
Exactly. That means breaking down the evidence, how it was interpreted, and how it was challenged, and whether that conclusion actually holds up under scrutiny. So before we start breaking anything down, we need to understand what the jury was presented with, because this case does not rely on a confession. It doesn't rely on a recovered body. It doesn't rely on any witnesses that actually saw what took place.
All the usual things.
Right. It relies 100% on reconstruction.
This case is built on interpretation.
Yeah. And that interpretation is built from a combination of the timeline, which we discussed. She left her apartment, headed to Chris Edwards' house, all of the things. We have the physical evidence. Her blood's all over the place.
All over.
And then we have the behavior. We have her behavior, and then we have dipshit asshat's behavior, saying that he called her, told her not to come, texted the next day, asked her why she didn't come, all of that. And at its core, the state's case begins with a simple sequence. Jessica leaves her apartment on May 10th. She tells people she's going to Christopher Edwards' residence. She calls while she's on the way, and then she sends that final text message. No shenanigans for Jessica. Mm-hmm. After that, there's no confirmed contact.
And everything after that centers on Christopher Edwards.
Yeah, because no one sees her anywhere else. There's no communication that places her anywhere else. So the state's position is this. She goes there and she never leaves. And that
would be my position too.
It would be my position. It's a pretty freaking logical one. And that leads directly to the second counterpoint, where this happened, in Asshat's bedroom, inside his aunt's house. Can you imagine? I don't know anything about his aunt, but could you imagine how pissed off that was? If one of my nephews or nieces was living with me, they would have to lock them up to keep them safe. Mm-hmm. I'm saying that.
One would hope she feels that way.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. She was open to the search of her house and everything. So there's nothing that makes me think that she was anything but just
floored.
Yeah.
And that becomes the focal point, his aunt's house.
Exactly. When investigators search that room, they find physical evidence. So that's the foundation of the case. Inside that bedroom, there's copious amounts of blood on the mattress. We talked about that. Covers the whole damn thing.
Disturbing amounts.
There's blood on the bed frame. There's blood on the walls. There's blood splatter all over the ceiling.
And it's identified as Jessica's.
Yes. And the state argues that with the volume of blood that's present there and the distribution of it all over the place and the placement, they're all consistent with a very violent event, not something minor and not something accidental.
So this is what they use to say she didn't leave alive.
Exactly, because there's no explanation presented that would account for that amount of blood. I mean, it's a lot of blood. We've talked about it. Like we said on the last episode, the pictures are available online.
Mm-hmm.
If you look up a picture of that mattress, it's not survivable.
Yeah. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, tell us what you think. But the state doesn't stop at the physical evidence. They add the context. Jessica disappears after that. She's never heard from again. Her car's found days later, ironically abandoned at the same place where both of them work, and a location that does not match where she said that she was going.
That adds to the idea that something interrupted her movement.
Yeah. And then there's Asshat himself. He's the last person that she said she was going to see. He's connected to the location where the evidence is found.
And there's no evidence placing her anywhere else.
None that's been found or confirmed. So when you put those pieces together, this is the case that the state presents. Jessica goes to Edward's residence. Something violent happens inside that bedroom. She never leaves, and her body is never recovered.
So even without a body, they're saying the evidence is enough.
Yes, it's enough to conclude that Jessica O'Grady was killed inside of that room and that Christopher Edwards is responsible. So now that we've laid out the state's case, we need to slow it down because a case can feel strong, but it can still have gaps.
So now we're not asking what it suggests. We're asking what it actually proves.
Exactly. So the timeline is clean. Jessica did leave her apartment and she was heading toward Edward's house and she was never heard from again. All of that matters, but it also has limits.
It tells us where she was going, but not what happened after she got there.
Right. The timeline supports that she likely made it to his residence, but it does not directly prove what happened inside. It doesn't prove whether she left or not. And it does not tell us how the events unfolded. And like we said, there's no witnesses. There's no confirmed observation of her entering the house or leaving it.
So the timeline points, but it doesn't close the case.
Exactly. Everything centers in that bedroom. It's his space inside the house where he's living. That gives investigators control of the environment. But again, there is a limit.
Being the location doesn't automatically explain what happened there.
No, it establishes where the evidence is, but it does not give us the full sequence of events. And then this is where the case becomes difficult to ignore, and that's the blood. Because, like we said, it is a large volume of blood, and it is widespread distribution. It is all over the place inside that bedroom. Multiple different surfaces.
This is the part that's hardest to explain away.
It is, because the presence of that much blood in that kind of a pattern strongly suggests a very violent event. But even here, there's still questions.
Yeah, does it prove death?
Not directly. It strongly implies serious injury. It definitely supports the state's theory, but without a body, there is no direct confirmation of, well, there's no direct confirmation of death.
Yeah.
There's no confirmation of cause of death, of mechanism of death, or even the exact moment of death. And this is the central issue in the case, and that is there is no body.
And that changes everything.
It does, because without a body, you lose the direct forensic confirmation. You lose the precision of the timeline. You lose independent verification of death. And so what you're left with is you have to infer death from the evidence. So when we step back, this is what we have. A timeline that points directly to Edwards, a location that ties directly to Edwards, and physical evidence at Edwards' residence that at least strongly suggests violence.
But each piece still requires interpretation.
Yeah, and that's the key. This case is not built on a single definitive proof. It's built on multiple pieces that together form what I think is a logical conclusion.
So the real question becomes, how strong is that conclusion when you start pulling at it?
Exactly. Which brings us to a big problem.
All right, spill the problem.
So up to this point, the case against this total piece of shit rests on one central idea. And that is that the evidence found in that bedroom, and I also didn't mention, but there's also blood in the trunk of his car.
Oh, yeah.
Blood.
We touched on that a little.
So, but we all are under the assumption that that blood evidence that was found all over the place is reliable.
And everything we've talked about depends on that being reliable.
Yes.
Okay.
Because if the evidence holds, then the case holds, right? I mean, if you're talking about the blood all over this piece of shit's bedroom, is there really any doubt in your mind that he murdered Jessica in that bedroom?
Not in mine, but you got to convince 12 people, right?
Right. And they did. He was convicted.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as that blood evidence is reliable, I say we have a pretty damn strong conviction here, right?
Yeah.
But there's a complication.
No.
There's
always a complication.
And it doesn't come from this case. It comes from another one. So total freaking asshat piece of shit. This son of a bitch. Oh, I hate this guy.
Ooh. Did we almost get an F-bomb there?
Just about.
I
hate this man. I hate him worse than all of the asshats that we've ever talked about. Yeah.
Including Dale Wayne Eaton. That's a lot of hate.
David Kofoed.
Kofoed?
Kofoed. This total pile of shit was the commander of the Douglas County Sheriff's Office Crime Scene Investigation Unit. And he supervised one of the largest forensic units in the whole state of Nebraska. His team processed all the major crime scenes in this area, including the evidence in this case.
So he's not just involved, he's overseeing the work, and he's more hated than a murderer.
Right.
Oh, no.
And that matters because years after this case, something real important comes to light. In a separate 2006 double murder investigation, Kofoed reports finding a small but very critical piece of blood evidence. That evidence helps support charges against two individuals. But later, that case collapses. The suspects are cleared. Totally different perpetrators are identified, and an investigation determines that Kofoed planted the blood evidence.
He actually put evidence into the case.
Yes, a court finds beyond any reasonable doubt
Son of a bitch.
that this total piece of shit tampered with evidence. And he planted evidence in the car of these two teenage kids to convict them of murdering their family members. And they were totally innocent. Totally innocent. He's convicted of a felony. The piece of shit is sent to prison. This is not an allegation. It is actual, proven in court evidence of tampering with evidence. And the conviction, obviously, it changes how people look at cases, all the cases.
Yeah.
And this is why I hate this son of a bitch so much worse than like a single murderer. Mm-hmm. Because this total asshat, not only do we have to wonder, are there innocent people in prison because of this son of a bitch?
Yeah.
But then now you have all of these murderers that are actually murderers. I think Chris Edwards is a total asshat murderer. Mm-hmm. But now you have like a whole freaking state full of murderers where everybody's like, well, he worked on my case, so I'm not guilty. He worked on my case. And then you have all these people that are like, well, I wonder, I mean, if he freaking planted evidence in this case. I don't know if there's anything worse than a law enforcement professional like this son of a bitch, because their grasp is so large.
Yeah.
Like the worst of the worst, Ted Bundy, pick one. John Wayne Gacy, he had like 33, I think, murders. They touch like 33 lives, and then that gets exponentially larger as you talk about the families affected. And I'm not taking anything away from that, but over the course of a career for a commander, you're talking hundreds of cases.
Yeah. Anything he ever had eyes on, hands in.
And you seriously have to wonder, was this a one-time thing?
Yeah.
Or is this a career-long, I decide who committed the murder and then I just make the evidence fit?
Yeah.
Like
God complex.
Where does this, this is not like tunnel vision. This is not like a dipshit cop. This is a convicted felon. The son of a bitch actually planted evidence where no evidence existed. That's way different than like tunnel visioning in on. I mean, this is worse than the West Memphis 3. This is worse than all the innocent cases that we talk about. This is worse because it's not like they took the evidence that they had, good, bad, or indifferent, put it before a jury, and the jury was a bunch of dumbasses that said, I believe it was a satanic murder too.
Mm-hmm.
This is, you actually invent shit that didn't exist and put that before a jury. I mean, I'm on a huge soapbox with this guy, but I hate him so much.
So now the question becomes, could something like that have happened here? And I'm scared to ask because you're going to explode, probably.
Yeah, that's exactly the question, because Kofoed's unit was involved in processing the evidence in Jessica O'Grady's case. And after his conviction, Edwards' defense obviously raises that issue on appeal. Of course
they do.
Who wouldn't?
I know, but still.
And arguing that the evidence could have been planted or manipulated or introduced after the fact. That argument is taken to court, and the courts address it directly. They acknowledge Kofoed's misconduct is real. He's a piece of shit. No doubt about it. And his conviction is serious, and it raises legitimate concerns with every case that he was involved in.
So, 2 questions.
Yes.
How long is he in jail for?
I didn't look. I don't know. I mean, it was a substantial conviction, but I don't know how long he was sent to jail for.
Okay. And they don't ignore it in this case.
No, but they also look at the evidence that's in this case specifically. So, an appellate court is not just going to say, because the arresting officer, or because the investigating officer, or because the crime scene analyst, or whoever it is was a total piece of shit, you're all innocent and we're just going to open the prison doors. They look at the evidence and
thank goodness.
Yeah. And they find the substantial blood evidence was documented. Like the case that he was convicted in literally was like a drop of blood in the trunk of a car. But what did he do? Carry barrels of blood into Edwards' apartment?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking about a drop of blood here. We're talking huge amounts of blood. Mm-hmm. And the court also found that the blood evidence was documented by multiple investigators, not just Kofoed and not just his team. And they talked about the entire scene itself. We've got blood, like I said, everywhere. And all of that was present before any claim of tampering was ever raised. And there's absolutely zero proof that any evidence was fabricated in this case.
So there's no actual evidence that he planted anything in this case.
Correct. The courts ultimately ruled that there is no provable act of evidence tampering in Edwards' case, and they reject his claim. So now we have 2 things that are both true at the same time. We have a forensic supervisor who is a total piece of shit, and was later convicted of planting evidence in another murder investigation.
And that's not a small issue.
No, but also there's no verified evidence that he did that in this case.
So the concern about that is real, but the proof isn't there.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
Once Christopher Edwards is convicted, the case doesn't end, obviously. It moves into appeals. It moves into post-conviction challenges.
So now the question isn't what happened, it's whether the conviction will hold up.
Exactly. The defense focuses on the foundation of the case. At its core, the argument is there's no body, there's no direct proof of death, and the case relies heavily on interpretation of physical evidence.
So they're attacking the same things we just questioned.
Yes, but they also go further. They challenge how the evidence was collected, how it was interpreted, and whether it can support a murder conviction at all. And then there's the whole Kofoed issue. His conviction for evidence tampering in another case and his role in processing the evidence here.
And that becomes a major part of their argument.
It does. They argue that the integrity of the evidence itself cannot be trusted. So when these issues go to court, the courts don't retry the case. We've talked about this before. Appellate courts do not retry the case. They focus on legal errors. And if those errors have anything to do with undermining the actual conviction. So
they're not deciding guilt again. They're deciding whether the process was sound.
Exactly. And appellate courts are very narrow. You know, they don't go broad. They look exactly at the arguments in the case, nothing more. And so it can be frustrating, but it's how the system is designed. In reviewing a case, the courts look at several key points. They look at sufficiency of evidence, whether the evidence presented at trial was enough for a reasonable jury to find guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And the court finds that it was.
So even without a body, they say the evidence meets the standard.
Yes. And then they looked at the Kofoed evidence integrity claims.
The amount of disdain you say his name with
hate this
palpable.
Guy. The courts acknowledge Kofoed's conviction is real. It raises serious concerns, but they also find there's no specific proof of fabrication in the case, and they find that key evidence was documented independently of this asset.
So concern alone isn't enough. You need the proof tied to this case.
Exactly. And then there's other claims. Additional arguments are raised about how the evidence was handled, about investigative conduct, about interpretation of findings. But across those claims, the courts consistently find there is no reversible error. So at the end of the appeals process, the result is clear. The conviction stands and the challenges are denied.
So legally, the case holds.
Yes, but that doesn't mean every question disappears, because appeals answer a very specific question. Was the conviction legally valid? They do not answer whether every part of the case is beyond doubt.
So something can be legally sound and still leave questions.
Exactly. After everything that we've walked through, this case comes down to weight. Not one piece of evidence, but all of it together.
So now it's not about what exists. It's about how much it actually proves.
Exactly.
Okay.
There are parts of this case that are difficult to move away from. Jessica goes to Edward's residence, and she is never seen or heard from again. Her car is found days later in a location where they both work and doesn't match her stated plan. And inside his bedroom, we have tons and tons of blood.
The combination is hard to ignore.
It is, because taken together, those facts strongly support one conclusion: that something very violent happened in that room and Jessica did not leave. But even strong cases have limits. There's no body. There's no direct cause of death. There's no reconstruction of exactly what happened.
So we're still relying on interpretation.
Yeah. And the case requires you to accept that the blood evidence reflects a fatal event, that she could not have lived with that much blood loss. You're forced to accept that she never left that residence and that there's no alternative explanation that fits. And those might be reasonable conclusions, but they're still conclusions. And then there's the whole Kofoed factor, the integrity question, a forensic supervisor tied to the case, later convicted of planting evidence.
That doesn't disappear just because the courts rejected it here, though, right?
No, it doesn't overturn the case on its own, but it introduces a different layer of doubt that we have to acknowledge. And then there's something else, and it's not legal. It's not forensic. It's practical.
What do you mean?
The logistics. If the state's theory is correct, then after a violent event happened in that room, Jessica's body is never found, which means it was removed from the house, it was transported, and it was disposed of somewhere.
And all of that without being seen, without leaving a trail, without anything being recovered?
Right. And when you look at that, there's a question that naturally comes up. Christopher Edwards is described as smaller than Jessica, lighter than Jessica, and physically less imposing than Jessica. Jessica was approximately 5'9" tall, weighed about 140 pounds.
So you're asking whether one person could realistically do all of that alone?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
And this is where I'll be clear. There is absolutely no evidence in the record or anywhere else that confirms there was an accomplice. There is no second suspect, but there's no verified involvement of anyone else. But from a practical standpoint, it is difficult for me to ignore that possibility.
That it may not have been just him?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's not proven. And like I said, it's not established, but it is a question for me that just doesn't go away. When you put all of this together, you end up with a case that looks like this. There's strong evidence that something violent happened. There's a strong indication that Jessica didn't leave that residence.
But we have gaps in how everything happened and what came after that.
Yes. And that's the tension in this case. Because the evidence points in one direction, even if it doesn't answer every question along the way. And after everything else, the timeline, the evidence, the challenges, the appeals, you're left with a decision, not about what's possible, but about what's most likely.
So where does that leave you?
It leaves me here. I believe something violent happened in that room. That amount of blood, the way it was distributed, the fact that Jessica is never seen again after going there, taken together, that's just not something that I can reasonably explain any other way except this total freaking pile of shit murdered this poor girl.
So for you, that part of the case holds?
It does. How about for you?
I think so too.
You're right there with me in the same place.
Yeah, he's disgusting.
Yes. I mean, I didn't bring it up, but in the appeals process, they tried to claim that it was menstrual blood.
Excuse me?
Pull up the pictures of the mattress.
I have.
No, I'm talking to the listeners.
Oh.
If there's any doubt about whether this was menstrual blood or not, pull up the pictures of the mattress. For me, that mattress seals the deal. If I was on the jury and I was showing that mattress and I was told this son of a bitch flipped this mattress over and then slept on it for several nights after the fact, he's guilty. Boom. Mm-hmm. He's guilty on that mattress for me all by itself.
You were withholding the menstrual blood thing to get my reaction, weren't you?
Potentially.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you add in the blood splatter all over the place, the blood on the ceiling, the blood on the sword, the blood on the towels and stuff that were found in the garage, the whiteout and white shoe polish and shit that we have video of this guy purchasing. I mean, for me, there's zero doubt. There's no doubt at all. I'm very comfortable, confidently saying Chris Edwards murdered Jessica O'Grady. I'm not comfortable saying he did it alone.
So those are the things that still don't fully line up.
Yeah, for me. But all of that doesn't mean that every part of this case is clean. There
are things that still don't fully line up.
Yes. There's no body. There's no confirmed sequence of events. There's no clear explanation for just how everything happened after that moment. And then there's the question of how it was done, the removal, the transport, her disappearance without any trace whatsoever. That's not easy to do.
And whether or not it could have been done by just one person.
Yeah, that's something that I really struggle with. Like I said, there's no evidence of an accomplice. There's nothing in the record. But from a practical standpoint, it's difficult to ignore the possibility that he might not have done all of that alone.
So even if the conclusion feels clear, the path to it doesn't.
Exactly. And that's where this case ultimately leads. A conclusion that feels supported. It's something I'm comfortable with, but a story that's still incomplete. And cases like this, they have a way of becoming everything except the person at the center of them.
The evidence, the arguments, all of it starts to just take over.
It does. But none of that is the reason that this case matters. Because before any of this, before the investigation, before the courtroom, there was a young woman whose life mattered. This is Symphony from the J.J. Hawk Band. And this is Jessica O'Grady. Jessica Jo O'Grady was 19 years old, an age where life is still opening up, where the future isn't fixed but full of possibility. She was a young woman in the middle of becoming who she was going to be. Not finished, not defined, still moving forward. Jessica had already begun to shape the path in quiet, meaningful ways. She chose to study education at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, a decision that reflected something people had long recognized in her. She cared about others. She connected with people easily, and she had a natural ability to make those around her feel seen and comfortable. That showed up most clearly in the way that she was with children. She spent time with her niece, helped coach her softball team, and stepped into those moments with a kind of patience and warmth that cannot be taught. For Jessica, it wasn't just something she did. It was part of who she was. She was moving towards a life where she would guide, teach, and shape young minds. A life where she would have stood in front of classrooms, helping children learn, grow, and understand the world around them. And when a life like that is taken, the loss doesn't stop with one person. It reaches further. There are children who were never taught by her, students who never had the chance to be encouraged by her, young lives that could have been shaped in ways that we'll never be able to measure. Because the impact of someone like Jessica isn't limited to the people that knew her. It extends outward into futures that were never realized. Those who knew her didn't describe her in dramatic terms. They remembered her in the way that people remember someone who was simply good to be around. Someone who made conversations easy. Someone who showed up. Someone who didn't need attention to have an impact. She lived in the everyday moments, the kind that don't seem important at the time, but become everything once they're gone. Time with friends, time with family, laughter that wasn't planned or forced, moments that felt small then, but carry weight now, because that's what's left when someone is taken. Not the headlines, not the arguments, not the details that get picked apart and debated. What's left are the spaces they used to fill, the roles they played in people's lives, the presence that once felt permanent. For Jessica's family, that absence did not replace her. It changed everything around her. There are birthdays that she didn't reach, milestones that she didn't get to experience, moments that she should have been part of. And for the people that knew her best, those moments don't just disappear. They stay quietly, consistently, because when someone is taken at that point in their life, you're not just losing who they were, you're losing who they were still becoming. Jessica O'Grady had a future that was still taking shape. She had direction, she had purpose, and she had people who loved her. Even now, years later, that love remains in memory, in absence, in the lives of people who continue to carry her with them. Because while cases may be argued and analyzed, the truth of a person's life is not defined by how it ended. It's defined by who they were. And Jessica O'Grady was someone who mattered.
The meters change, the time embrace, pattern born from small mistakes. Every thread begins to spin, building worlds we live within. Every emotion finds its light, between the lost and found. We are formed before the tone. Every sound our blood has known. Through the drift and through the sway, we keep turning unafraid. If the world should lose its key, and start anew. Colors shift from gray to blue. In the hum we recognize something vast behind.